I wasted years in the gym trying almost every new trend and method to get jacked. And I thought I was doing everything right, but all it did was make me skinny fat. So in this video, I'll show you all the hard lessons that I learned so you don't waste years like I did. Starting with the number one reason that's stopping you from getting jacked. The fitness industry is obsessed with extremes. One side preaches that one hard set is optimal, then the other side says that higher frequency and more volume leads to more growth. And then there's the science-based community taking extreme to a whole new level. I tried almost all of it, but the reality is that they barely made any difference. What's always worked still works today. So the first lesson is, simple works, always. So you don't need fancy equipment or extreme plans. Just pick any program and stick to that for at least a year. And if you want the workout program that I use with many of my clients, you can get it in the description below. Which brings me to my second piece of advice. So many people start a workout program, but then they hear the exact opposite is better, or they're not seeing the results within a few weeks, and then they hop onto the next program. But the workout program isn't as important as you think. 3 or 5 days, upper lower, full body split. From my experience, almost every workout program will work as long as you do 10 to 15 sets per muscle group per week, train close to failure, and do this long enough to be able to actually see results. And number 3 is related to that. Whenever I didn't get stronger or stopped getting muscle soreness, I added more sets. And the only thing I grew was my fatigue. It turns out I just wasn't training hard enough, and that I was training to the point it got uncomfortable, not to failure. So this lesson is that you don't need more sets, but higher intensity. But the next one really has been one of the most important lessons for me. With social media, it's never been easier to compare yourself to others. But the problem is that algorithms are designed to only show you the top 1%. And some of these guys are on steroids or genetic freaks. So comparing yourself to them is unrealistic unless you're ready to switch over to the dark side. And even if they are natural, all these guys have been consistently training for many years. Looking up to these influences can make you feel like you're behind or that you're not doing enough. But the truth is that you're not behind, you're just at a different stage. So the fourth lesson is, your chapter 1 may be someone else's chapter 10. Everyone started somewhere, but ultimately it's you versus you. When I first got into lifting, I started out with a friend of mine, and after a few months I got frustrated that I was still benching 40 kilos while he was almost hitting 100. And I realize now that things like arm length, torso proportion, shoulder width and mobility all have an effect on how quote-unquote strong you are. The absolute number of the weight doesn't flip and matter, as long as the weights are increasing over time. Which brings me to something many people get wrong. Because we hear that progressive overload is so important, and it is, but if you're sacrificing form, range of motion, or time under tension just to beat the logbook, you're not actually progressing. So progressive overload isn't the goal, it's the result of training hard with good form, nutrition, and recovery. And speaking of nutrition, this is exactly what made me skinny fat. When I started, things like the GOMAD diet and dirty bulks were the standard. It looks hardcore, but it's way over the top. You don't need to chug a gallon of milk a day to grow muscle. A very small surplus is enough. Even 100 calories above maintenance will grow your muscle. But to be safe, I do recommend about 200 to 300 calories. But bulking faster just means more fat gains and having to cut longer. And now that we covered calories, let's talk protein. I know guys who are eating a carton of eggs per day and 2 chicken breasts for dinner. But more protein doesn't automatically mean more gains. In fact, less protein can lead to more gains. I found that the sweet spot is 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. Going higher doesn't have meaningful benefits, so you're better off eating more carbs instead and have more energy in your workout. And for number 9, I think we've all experienced this at some point. When I stopped drinking alcohol, everyone around me started making fun of me. Like I was the one with the problem. And then I have clients who are doing all they can to lose weight, telling me they're made fun of because they didn't order a burger while eating out, or they asked for sparkling water at a birthday party. The thing is that not everyone will understand or support you on your journey. You really have to trust yourself and the process. Which brings me to the 10th piece of advice. Whenever you start something new, it's exciting. And so it's easy to just jump in and do everything at the same time. But it often gets overwhelming or frustrating. If you want to learn how to juggle multiple balls at once, you don't start with all 3 or 4. You start with 1 or 2, and only when you nail this, you add the next ball and get better again. So the lesson here is to do one thing at a time and do that one thing really well. And even when you do everything right for weeks, you'll still have days where the weight on the scale jumps in the opposite direction you want it to go. But that doesn't mean you're failing or that the plan isn't working. So only use the weight trend over multiple weeks to base decision on. The number on the scale changes daily, but unfortunately the mirror just won't change overnight. And that can be very frustrating. Building muscle is a slow process. And it reminds me of the time I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro a few years ago. After 4 days of walking, 6 to 8 hours a day, climbing to around 4,000 meters above sea level, we finally got ready for summit night. We set off at midnight, already exhausted. It was pitch dark and we could barely see where we were going, let alone see the top. And at some point, it got so hard that I genuinely thought 1,000 times about giving up. But every time I told myself, I'm still breathing, I'm still walking. If I stop now, it's not because I can't, it's because I don't want to continue. And honestly, that's exactly what this journey can feel like. Sometimes you lose sight of where you're going, sometimes you feel like quitting. But if you just keep taking that one next step, and the next step after, and the one step after, eventually you'll see the top. If you just stick with it long enough, you will reach that destination. But the real win is not when you're just chasing the outcome, but fall in love with the process. Something else that I've learned over the years is that the one thing that really makes a physique pop is having wide shoulders. So the next lesson is to watch this video next. It'll show you exactly how you can get shoulders that fill up your t-shirt.